Ready to design the home you've always imagined? Sarandis will help you realise that dream. An award-winning premier building and home design firm based in Perth, Sarandis will make your journey their inspiration from your very first personalised consultation and craft you a bespoke home that's tailored to your lifestyle, vision and dreams. Visit sarandis.com.au to be inspired. Sarandis, proud sponsors of the Uzo Talk podcast. Krazy Productions presents Thanasis Vasilakos and Master Tempo direct from Greece, live in Sydney for a massive 4-hour show on Friday, 16th of May at Canterbury Hurlston Park RSL Club. Tickets are selling fast. Call 0418 451 481 to book today. There's no Uzo Talk without a bottle of Uzo, which is why we love the Greek Providor. Get a real taste of the very best produce that Greece has to offer. From olive oils and delicious artisan sweets to unique spirits, earthy herbs and memorable wines. Visit thegreekprovidor.com.au to see their amazing range. The Greek Providor, proud sponsors of the Uzo Talk podcast.
Sound is.
Nick, have you ever wondered why we get hooked on certain habits, maybe social media scrolling, alcohol, dare I say?
Yeah, definitely, Tom. I always wondered why, and I do it without even thinking half the time anyways, which is a bit scary when we do things we don't even think about doing them.
I don't know if you want to out yourself, but do you have any addictions? Light ones, nothing that's illegal. Let's start there.
Got me. You know what? Scrolling, very bad.
Yeah?
I get hooked on the phone. So when I'm there, start scrolling, I think, shit, where did the last hour go? Definitely. Eating whole chickens. I love it.
I'm not sure that really classifies them as
I
an
have
addiction.
one a week. Well, that's probably going to be my question. How many times do you need to do something before it becomes an addiction?
That's a great question.
Yeah. Also, you know what else is fascinating?
What's that?
The word psychology. Mm-hmm. We know it's a Greek word.
Yes,
and we know why it's spelt with a P, psychology.
Yes.
Why the hell do the English not say the P?
Great question.
Are they lazy? Is it like a lazy language? Fuck it, just cut it out.
Yeah, just no P, too hard. We don't like the ps sound.
Or is that just to piss off someone trying to learn English? What do you reckon?
Well, English is hard enough to learn as it is, really. Yeah. So, fantastic. Well, look, the reason why we're having this banter today is because our guest is actually a psychologist, among a number of things, really. But
definitely. Shall
Shall I introduce you to her?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, so our guest today is a highly accomplished clinical psychologist, researcher, lecturer, and author whose work encompasses pioneering therapy programs for children with disabilities to tackling addictions and mental health challenges. She's the founder of the Australian Institute for Human Wellness, a practicing clinician, and an academic at the University of Technology, Sydney, where she's contributed to leading research in psychology and neuroscience. Her particular area of work is in addictions, including alcohol, drugs, smoking, vaping, gambling, gaming, pornography, sex, and shopping addictions. All the good stuff. Yeah. Her expertise has taken her around the world, presenting at prestigious conferences and publishing in top-tier journals. But it doesn't stop there, because beyond psychology, she's also a classically trained concert pianist who has performed at venues like the Sydney Opera House and Carnegie Hall. Wow. As I mentioned, she recently added author to her list of achievements with her book, The Dopamine Brain, which explores the science behind our habits and how to find balance in life. Joining us today in the distillery, Dr. Anastasia Hronis. Welcome to Uzo Talk.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming.
Great to have you here.
Amazing to have you. Thank you so much. Given your work studying addictions like alcohol, am I right in saying that this podcast is prime for it's prime for the picking to dissect, isn't it?
Yeah, right there in the middle of the table, ready to get into it. Yeah.
Exactly. Plenty of choices. And we have to say in every episode, you got to drink responsibly.
Drink responsibly. Thank you. Oh, dear.
No, well done. Well, welcome. And you've had a busy day by the sounds of things. You've already done a full day's worth of work and you've come in here to join us.
Yeah, no, it's been a busy day, but a good day being in the clinic. So it's always nice to have a day in the clinic. As I was saying before, I was out in Broken Hill last week, so a nice change to be back in Sydney.
Yeah, so you do travel a lot though. I've been following you on socials. You're all around the world.
Yeah, I do a bit of travel, mostly interstate, but a little bit overseas for work, for conferences, running training and things like that.
Yeah.
But I do like going out to some of the more remote parts in Australia. Always
Fantastic.
like interesting communities out there, and it's beautiful landscape.
Definitely. Well, we're going to touch on Broken Hill and Tamworth, I'm sure.
But I have to say, before we move any further, I mean, for someone so accomplished, we have to say, very young, amazing. Like, genuine. I'm not going to ask you exactly how old you are.
No, that's okay. I'm 33, so
Unbelievable.
Actually, was I close?
Seriously.
No. I don't think
Actually,
any of us got it. Might have been close.
I would have said mid-20s, honestly.
yeah. Sometimes people think I'm younger than I am.
Yeah.
I'll thank my mum for her good genetics of skin.
Good Greek genes.
It's the olive oil, right?
Yes, it's the olive oil. That's it.
Fantastic. Okay, well, shall we get into it properly, Nick?
Yes, let's have a drink.
Stiniyamas.
Cheers.
Yamas.
Welcome.
Awesome to have you here. This is our first psychologist, isn't it? Must be.
I think so. I reckon she's already worked us out, Tom. What do you think?
100%. The second she walked through the door, it was like that. It was like that scene in Fawlty Towers when the psychiatrist comes in, and Basil's all over the shop. He's worried that he's being dissected and whatever. You feeling like that?
Yeah, I feel like you've already analysed this. She's writing a prescription as we speak. No.
Do you get that sort of stuff a lot? I mean, it's obviously this is bloody tongue in cheek, but do you get that sort of reaction for the work that you do?
Yeah. People are often sort of asking like, oh, so do you know what I'm thinking? Or can you sort of figure me out? Or what do you think about my personality? Like they come in with the hard-hitting questions and I'm like, I'm off duty. Like I'm just here to have a bit of fun.
Good for you. Very high in demand.
Oh, jeez.
Well, before we move on, we're trying a new drink today, actually, would you believe?
We are. We've been sitting on one bottle, well, not one bottle, but one brand for ages.
Yes.
And now we're diversifying.
We are. We're trying a limoncello liqueur from your neck of the woods, Tom.
It is, mate.
From the boys from Lazarus, from Corfu.
Lazaris from Kerkira. Amazing.
So what do you think of that, Anastasia?
I like it.
You like it?
I quite like it. I mean, I'm a bit fussy with alcohol, I must say. There's a lot that I don't like, but this I can get on board with.
Yeah?
Yeah.
It has to be said, limoncello more closely associated with Italian spirits, let's say, but Kerkira obviously being in such close proximity and our history with the Italians and the Venetians and whatnot, that's why we've got it.
Is that
It's
why?
part of it, yeah.
Okay.
So between this, limoncello and
The kumquats.
kumquat, those are the two drinks that we've got, and very sickly sweet. So it's not for drinking in high quantities, but again, drink responsibly.
Well,
but
it
yeah,
does
it's great.
say it's a after meal as a digestive. So
Correct.
it might be good for you, for your digestive
That's right.
system. What do you think?
Absolutely. The Italians have that right.
Yeah.
The Italian, I don't know if you've noticed this. You must know, Nick, but the Italians, there's rules. Like you can't have milk after a certain time. You can't eat past a certain time.
Oh.
It's all to do with your gut health. They're very
Can't
anal
crack
retentive.
pasta. Can't have pineapples on there.
I know. It's all rules.
Pizza. Yeah, you've got too many rules.
But no, I really like this one,
Yeah,
actually.
it's pretty good. Well done, Crystal. So compliments of the Greek providor.com.au.
That's right.
Thank you, Crystal.
Fantastic. Yeah. And as ever, thank you so much to Crystal for being on board. It is a fantastic place to get all of your Greek produce, the premium Greek produce, that is. So again, drinks, all the stuff in the pantry. What else? There's cookbooks in there. There's all sorts of stuff. Get on the website, thegreekprovidor.com.au.
Definitely. Thank you. Well, can we call you Anastasia or is it Dr. Anastasia?
Anastasia. Anastasia.
You sure?
Yes.
Okay. So we always start with all of our guests, where they're from, your background. So I take it you're born and bred in Sydney?
Yes, born and raised in Sydney, born just up the road at St. George Hospital.
Wow.
And I haven't moved
Real local.
too far yet. Yeah. My clinic's now in Cogra as well, so I've stayed local. But born and raised here. Mum was born in Greece. She came out when she was about 6 years old. Dad was born here, but dad's side of the family's from Tripoli and mum's side is from Piraeus.
There you go. So Tripoli. We've got a lot of famous people from Tripoli, don't we, Mark? Mark Burris. Sorry,
Did you just call me Mark?
It's been a long day.
You're getting ahead of yourself. No, absolutely. Tripoli, absolutely. There's, so many famous people, but equally from Piraeus. Such an amazing area as well. You know,
definitely.
and the home of Karaiskaki Stadium. I'm not an Olympiacos fan, but let's just throw that out there.
And what about your grandparents? Were they from those areas or from another Horior possibly?
Same areas as far as I'm aware.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when did your mum come out? What year,
She
remember?
was 6 years old, so I'm not sure the exact year, but
You're giving her age away here.
yeah, look, I'll keep that private.
Okay.
When she listens back, I'm not sure that she'll want me to disclose that information.
Okay. Was it a particular boat she came on that you're aware of by any
I'm not
chance?
sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure, but yeah, she came young with my grandparents. She's an only child, and I mean, I went for the first time in, I think it was 2017. I went with my dad back to Greece, and we visited a lot of family on both mum's side and dad's side, and got to, I mean, it was my first time visiting them. And actually we were there for Easter. So it was really beautiful because we got to go to the church, do the services in the Horior, and just be with the community there. It was so beautiful.
Fantastic.
So what was that like for you to go back, having, you know, obviously you were, you know, mature by the time you went to Greece for the first time. What was it like going there for the first time, having heard, I'm assuming, all these stories and, you know, from your mum and, you know, the rest of the family? What was the feeling like?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Ready to design the home you've always imagined? Surrandus will help you realise that dream. An award-winning premier building and home design firm based in Perth, Surrandus will make your journey their inspiration. From your very first personalised consultation, and craft you a bespoke home that's tailored to your lifestyle, vision and dreams. Visit surrandus.com.au to be inspired. Surrandus, proud sponsors of the Uzo Talk podcast. Krazy Productions presents Thanasis Vasilakos and Master Tempo, direct from Greece, live in Sydney for a massive 4-hour show on Friday, 16th of May at Canterbury Hurlstone Park RSL Club. Tickets are selling fast. Call 0418 451 481 to book today. There's no Ouzo talk without a bottle of Ouzo, which is why we love the Greek Providor. Get a real taste of the very best produce that Greece has to offer. From olive oils and delicious artisan sweets to unique spirits, earthy herbs and memorable wines. Visit thegreekprovidor.com.au to see their amazing range. The Greek Providor, proud sponsors of the Ouzo Talk podcast.
It was kind of exactly how I felt it would be in some way. You know, it was I kind of want to say a little bit of like feeling like going home. It felt very familiar, even though I'd never been there before. It felt like, like I could just connect with the people, connect with the community. Didn't feel foreign, which was so nice. Yeah. And especially visiting a lot of family for the first time. You know, I'd spoken to them over the phone or messages on Facebook, see pictures and things like that. But actually then meeting them for the first time was so lovely and felt really connected to them, even though we were, you know, we hadn't met before. So
was there any culture shock for you while you were over there, or did you feel right at home instantly?
I felt at home. Yeah. We spent some time in Athens. I loved Athens. Amazing. I love Athens. It's good fun.
It gets such a bad rap, like, honestly.
I know.
And then you go there. I would live there in a heartbeat. Yeah. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Does it cop a bad rap now, though? I don't think it does. I've never met anyone that says they hate it. Everyone says they love it.
Less so now, but back in the day, like when I first started going by myself, sort of mid-2000s, you know, all that sort of thing, all of my mates were like, mate, that's a hole, you know. And it's hard when you're going in the middle of summer and all you see is, okay, everyone's sweating, there's buses everywhere, it's a concrete jungle, and then you've got all the ruins in between. You kind of get it.
Yeah, true.
What really did it for me was going in winter.
Yeah.
In winter, the nightlife. Wow, fantastic.
Yeah, well, I think we were there sort of April-ish, May. So you know, we weren't in the kind of peak of summer where it was very touristy. Yep. And as you said, like at night we'd go out, there was music, there was the tavernas. It was great. It was good fun.
It's so different, isn't it? Like there's just that culture. Like we were there last year again, and it was like 3 a.m, and I went out onto the balcony because I couldn't sleep. And there were bars underneath and cafes and everything was still pumping at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
That's the kind of city you want to live in, surely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
This place, we've got it wrong, right?
We're doing something very different here, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. For those who don't know, our listeners in the US and everywhere else, you can't get a beer after what time in Sydney?
Midnight, depends where you're at.
Late night
It's pretty
snacks.
bleak. It's pretty bleak. But look, it is changing. We've got a couple of... Paul Nicolau's one of them as well. He's one of ours, and he's like he's trying to change the city, and he's trying to open up bars up until 3. There's a couple others around. So look, hopefully it's changing.
We need more than Brothers Kebabs as a late night snack.
Yeah.
Anastasia's business. You've done it too many times. Right?
Oh, okay. You're taking me back to my 20s, that's for sure.
That's how you sober up, isn't it? Is that what it is?
That is where you sober up, but you feel it for the next 3 days. Anyway, we digress. So what's your connection to Greece now? Obviously, you've had a successful career. You're having a successful career. And you've only been a couple of times, as you say. But what is your connection on a daily basis? Does Greece sort of play a key part in your life now?
I definitely feel like my Greek culture is a part of my identity. Like if you asked me to describe myself, there'd be a few different ways, but being Greek and being of Greek sort of background is definitely part of it. I mean, I'm connected with my grandparents, with my family, with culture through them, with religion and the church as well. So I guess for me, it's been finding ways to kind of stay connected to the Greek culture while being in this sort of modern Australian life as well.
So for you, it's conscious to try and find connections, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that I kind of think about, and definitely when I see sort of events and things, like I was at the Greek festival a couple of weeks back, I saw you guys up there on the stage as well, like making the real effort to kind of put that in the diary and make it something to attend.
Yeah, right.
Because I think otherwise, for those of us who are born here, living here, we can pretty easily slip away from it if we don't make that conscious choice to stay connected.
Why do you think it's important though? What is it that we're fighting for, really? Because, we kind of feel it sort of intrinsically. We do a bloody podcast about it.
I was going to say, it's obviously something driving you there.
Exactly. Yeah. But I can't really decide what it is for us. Like, is it a sense of responsibility? I don't get it. But everyone sort of tries to somehow get involved or teach their kids Greek or whatever it is. What is it for you, do you think?
And I think that's it, right? It's like certain milestones or stages in your life where you go, you know what, this is actually really important. I'm going to make sure the kids go to Greek school or do Greek dancing lessons or, pass down recipes and things like that.
All the shit you hated growing up, right?
All the things I felt forced to do as a kid. And now I'm very thankful that, my parents and grandparents did sort of, push me in that direction.
Did they say that to you? Because I remember Mum saying I think I've told you this story before. The first day that I went to Greek school, I was watching Saturday Disney. And then everything changed all of a sudden. Ripped away from Saturday Disney, went up the road to St. Spiridon Church to get signed up for Saturday Greek school. Never the same ever again.
You never had a Saturday the same again.
No, but Mum's whole thing was, you'll thank me later.
Oh.
And unfortunately, she was right.
Yeah. How many times our parents say that you'll thank me one day for this?
100%.
Well, maybe that's what it is. We got indoctrinated at a young age. We didn't realise. We started the podcast.
Yeah, 100%.
You reckon from a 2-year-old kid? I used to get bribed going to Greek school. Mum used to get me a bag of hot chips with vinegar in the old butcher's paper.
Oh, yeah.
That was my bribe.
Surely that was a newspaper of your vintage.
No, that was the old butcher's paper.
Okay.
Not that old.
I remember the newspapers. What are you talking about?
Do you?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
The back end of it.
Okay. No, it was always the old butcher's paper. And you stick your hand in and you get some hot bits. And then sometimes you had to open it up because you might have missed a little pocket where there's a few more chips in there.
The salty bits down the bottom.
Yeah.
But that was your bride.
That was my
Go to
bride.
Greek school and you'll get hot chips with vinegar.
Well, the reward was Mum would turn up and take me to Greek school and I'd get the chips. I thought, fuck. Can't wait. Where are the chips after school?
It's worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
I did Greek school when I was young, and then my grandma, my yaya, actually bought the books that they used to teach the kids.
Yeah.
And so
then,
yeah, I think so. My dad had the job of sourcing them, and then my yaya would sit with me, and we try and do it regularly. I mean, I resisted a little bit, but she'd go through and we'd do the reading and the writing and all of that.
Awesome.
She'd sit with me and do it,
Yeah.
and I mean, I think back and I'm like, oh, how great. She's passed a few years now, but she would really kind of make that effort to do that. And again, they were like, you'll thank us one day, and you know what? I do thank them.
Classic.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, we sort of end up like our parents now. What do you think? The older you
100%.
get.
Yeah, well, I've got I've got 2 kids now, 7 and about to turn 2. And the older one, I find myself saying the same bullshit that my parents would say to me, and it's like, oh my God, I can see it now. I can see it. Anyway.
Classic.
At least you're self-aware enough to say, okay, they were right.
Yes.
Fine.
Yes.
See, I've sinned from a Greek. My kids lasted probably about a month. I feel bad for them. We'd go after school and then they did swimming, squad training, they did rugby league, soccer, water polo. It was too much.
See, rugby league was my out. As soon as I started playing, it was like, yeah, no more.
Yeah.
But the trade-off was, okay, you can stop going, but you need to read the Greek newspaper every weekend. It's like, yeah. Akoma perimeni.
Yeah. Wow. I'd go in and I see my kids literally sleeping at 5 PM. I go, forget it. Get out.
It's not happening.
Yeah.
You're not learning anything. Waste of time.
Oh, dear.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. So what I guess inspired you to go down the path that you've gone down professionally? I mean, am I right in saying that there's, certainly from our generation, you're a little bit younger, obviously, but there was a little bit of a stigma with that sort of line of work, or a little bit of a taboo for some reason.
Yeah.
What was it that made you go down this path?
Do you know what? It's an interesting question. I get asked that, and I don't have like a real great answer, like some story that and this happened to me at this point in my life, and then I decided, you know what, I'm going to be a psychologist. I don't have that. It kind of was a decision of when I was in year 12 and I was thinking, what am I going to do next? I was like, no, you know what, psychology sounds interesting. Maybe I'll give that a go. And it was simple as that. And then I kind of went, I loved it. I fell in love with it, and I just kept pursuing it. And
Wow.
I'm glad I did.
So it's one thing, though, to decide this is what I'm going to do. It's quite another, though, to go to uni, do those 3 to 4 years, and then say, I'm going in for more of this.
Yeah.
Why? What? I always ask academics, like, why did you go even further? Because to me, it's like signing up for, a mini HSC every few months. You know what I mean? Like, why would you do it?
And I never left. I mean, I'm still there. But I think I'm lucky in that from a young age, maybe my parents instilled a real love of learning, and I really loved being at uni. So I did my undergrad, I did my honours, I did my masters, I did my PhD. And I remember when we finished masters, because we need to do masters in order to practice as psychologists. And a lot of my friends were graduating and they were like, yes, done with uni, can't wait to get out of here, no more exams. And I'd signed up to do my PhD and I was like, I'm so glad I'm not leaving. Yeah. I just want to be here longer. I loved the environment. I had a great experience. I had really supportive sort of supervisors and academic staff at the university. And then I never left. I finished my PhD and I started working there. So I'm at UTS and I had a really great experience there. So I'm sure that's a part of it. But I just love it.
Was there any element of the, this is kind of safe, I know this environment, or was it really just, I just want to learn more?
Yeah, that too. Like, it's familiar. I know the people that work here. I know the workplace and the environment. I know I like it. I know I'm happy here. Like, I'm genuinely happy to come in each day. It's quite I want to say, like, stimulating environment. You get to talk to, I mean, I'm quite junior in terms of seniority of academics,
Not for long.
But I mean, my supervisors, the professors at staff, it's so inspiring to have a conversation with them and just be like, wow. You are so smart and so well informed and, so interesting to talk to. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it.
Yeah, fascinating. So true lover of learning. Definitely.
Yeah, I think so.
Wow, never ending.
We know of at least one other Greek at UTS, Dr. Helen Vatsakopoulos.
Yes, of course.
Who's a champion.
She's amazing.
But are there any other Greeks there? What's the Greek landscape like?
The Greek landscape like? That's an interesting question. I haven't done a study, so I can't give you data, but there's definitely a few of us. Yeah, there's a few of us there, absolutely. And I know, like, amongst the students, there's the Greek society that's in the sort of undergraduate kind of courses as well. So we're definitely around.
Yes.
Classic.
Fantastic.
So in your study, so what did you focus on more in particular? I know Tom touched on it right at the beginning, but what was your primary area of expertise?
Yes. So my PhD was in a different field to sort of what I focus on now. So my PhD was looking at predominantly children who have intellectual disabilities and looking at how we can adapt therapy for their needs. So historically it was thought they have sort of these cognitive impairments. They can't do traditional talk therapy. So they've been somewhat sort of systematically excluded from a lot of therapies. So my research really looked at, how can we actually change the way we do therapy to adapt to what their needs are. So we did research, we developed a program, we got to go to a few schools and actually trial the programs with kids who had intellectual disabilities. So that was great, and there is some ongoing work and research attached to that I'm sort of involved in, but it's not my main focus now. Now I focus more on addictions. So I had the privilege of many years back, I worked as a research assistant and I fell into it. I actually applied for a job doing research in something that wasn't addiction related. And they were like, nah, you didn't get it. But can we hold your CV just in case something else comes up? And I was like, yeah, sure. I want some money. So yeah, let's do it. And then they contacted me a couple months later. They're like, we've got some research in gambling. And I was like, sure. All right. Okay. It wasn't necessarily something I thought I'd be interested in. And so I had that experience. And then I worked at St. John of God Hospital in Burwood, which is a psychiatric hospital. And I was doing all different anxiety, depression, PTSD programs. And then they said to me, we need someone to do our addictions program. I'd just taken 6 weeks leave. So I didn't feel like I had too much wiggle room to negotiate. And they were like, you're it. And I was like, oh, I haven't really done much addictions work before. So I fell into it there again. And both times with the research and the clinical work, I just loved it. I fell into it and I was like, thank God I found this because I love it. And that's what I really focus on nowadays, both in my clinical work, but also the ongoing research that I do.
That must have been so empowering to be in that environment and to be like, wow, I actually found what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah,
How was that for you?
It was such a good feeling. And I don't know that there was ever a moment where that sort of dropped for me, but I had these, moments of looking back being like, you know what? This is that thing that I didn't really know that I wanted to do it, or I was like, I guess I'll just give it a go and see what happens. And I'm so glad I did give it a go. Yeah.
Fantastic.
There you go. So addiction, maybe give us your definition of addiction, because we talked about it in the intro of how often do you need to do something before you realize you're addicted.
Yeah, yes. It's interesting, right? So it's not necessarily how much we do something. It's more about how much control I feel I have over it, because I can choose to do something every day, and that's a active conscious choice I make for myself. Great, that's fine. But if I feel pulled and drawn to kind of do it in a way that feels out of my control, that's when we're maybe looking at something that feels problematic. So you mentioned social media and scrolling before. Those algorithms know how to pull us in, and it really is that kind of feeling of being drawn into it rather than, you know what I think I'll do right now? I think I'll open Instagram and have a scroll. It's not usually that kind of conscious, or we don't choose it in that way. We're pulled to it.
Maybe let's talk about a few of the things, the areas that we spoke about in that intro, because I'm just trying to find it here. But what some of the areas that we sort of mentioned was alcohol, drugs, smoking, vaping, which is a huge one at the moment, gambling, gaming, pornography, sex. I mean, maybe let's start there, because as we all know, sex sells. So, I mean, I'm going out on a limb here, right? The way that Will Ferrell portrayed a sex addict in Blades of Glory is not what a sex addict actually is. Most guys would sit here and be like, we're all addicted to it. What does that actually manifest as?
Yes. Yeah. So it's a really good point, because it's it's not just how much we do it or how kind of compelled we are to do it, but also, does it create a problem in my life? Something's only a problem if it's a problem, right? So are there some sort of consequences or negative impacts as a result of me doing that thing repeatedly? Right. And for some of us, when we think about social media addiction, right? Yeah. The consequences for most people are pretty low level, right? Okay, maybe I spend a little bit too much time on my phone. I could be doing other things. It'd probably be better for me. But the kind of consequences don't feel catastrophic, as opposed to someone who's got a severe drug, alcohol, sex addiction where it's consuming a lot of their life. Maybe they're spending a lot of money on it. It's, impacting their health. It's impacting their relationships. You kind of see the other areas of their life start to crumble as a result of it.
Wow, interesting.
So with social media, so for example, when you're scrolling through, I find in the mornings, when I used to scroll a lot, used to get sore eyes. My eyes used to get really sore, and no matter how well I slept, if I was on social media in the morning for about half an hour, I felt exhausted again. Is that my eyes looking at the screen, or is it just my mind ticking over for these 10-second clips?
It's maybe a bit of both,
Okay.
but I think as well, like there's this thing about social media where we consume it very passively, but there's some sort of overwhelming feel to it. Like there's so much, right? You remember back in the days of old Facebook, you'd scroll on your home feed, you get to the end and there was like, it either said, you're all caught up, like congratulations, like you got to the end.
True.
Yeah.
Or there was a button and it said, click to see more. And you had to kind of, it was a way of getting that kind of prefrontal cortex of the brain back online, the part of our brain that makes decisions rather than get sort of stuck in this endless scroll. And so it was an opportunity for us to be like, do I actually want to keep scrolling or have I got to get up and get ready for work now? Like, you know, it's that circuit breaker, but they remove those now because they know that those potentially take us away from the phone or away from the app.
That's such a good point. And I can, let me tell you, as a comms person, someone who, you know, gets paid basically to read newspapers and manage impressions and all that sort of stuff, not knowing where the end is very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I reckon maybe the cause of a lot of anxiety in people because to your point, you know, there isn't that thing where it's like, you're all caught up.
Yeah.
The news cycle and all that just keeps going and going and going.
It's a feeling of being out of control. Not that we want to necessarily have control over what's presented to us on social media, but this idea that there's just like endless stuff out there. Funny, not funny, you know, awful, you know, we see all sorts of things on social media, but it's endless. And there's something that I think psychologically is really quite overwhelming about that.
So is there a correlation now? I mean, maybe it's not part of the work that you're doing, but do you think that there's a correlation between, or is there an increase, say, in levels of anxiety in recent years because of that? Or are we seeing increased levels of any kind of mental illness, let's call it, or something?
It's interesting you say that. So there was a book that came out last year, if I'm correct, called The Anxious Generation. And it's by I think he's a US psychologist, Jonathan Haidt. And he basically talks a lot about that there's this correlation between anxiety and social media, tech, etc. in our youth that we're seeing as rising because, you know, we're not seeing rates of mental health go down. And we know so much more about it nowadays. We've got lots of access to resources and tools and all these sorts of things, but it's not decreasing. If anything, it's slightly increasing.
So do you think that's because of social media? Again, it's only your opinion or from what you've read.
I think social media has a role to play in it, but I think there's something to be said for like how these platforms are designed, things like algorithms, etc., rather than actually the social function of the platforms, because we didn't see these kind of problems, you know, back in those original days of social media, of getting hooked on the apps or on these platforms. So there's a lot to be said about the information that we get fed that we're not even necessarily aware we're being fed in a very specific way.
I reckon it had to have started with Twitter, really, because that's where the, I don't want to use the term swamp. That's where it has
I thought Facebook was first, wasn't it?
It was, but where the level of anxiety and where the real negativity started. Facebook initially was, I think, was fairly respectful. Yeah.
Twitter and it was designed for social connection. It was like you added your friends and you posted your dinner. We'd post a photo of the cheese platter here and you know, and look what we're doing. And your friends would go, oh, that's great. I wish I could be there too. Right. It had that social function. Social media is no longer just social. It's like how people get their news these days and how people stay connected with world events or how people consume entertainment. It's like all these other things as well as social connection.
Or how news is interpreted. That's probably the big one as well.
Yeah, that's it.
So with anxiety, give us your definition of anxiety before I ask my next question.
Yeah, so anxiety is a naturally occurring emotion. We all have anxiety. It's that feeling of fear, that fight or flight response that we get when we perceive some sort of threat or danger. We'll all experience anxiety. We'll never get rid of anxiety. Anxiety in and of itself is not a bad thing. So we sometimes talk to people about, you know, it doesn't feel comfortable. It's not nice, but it's not in and of itself a bad thing. All emotions are points of data. They give us information about our experience. But for some people, anxiety can become problematic, can be quite overwhelming, and it gets activated in situations where it doesn't need to be activated.
Okay. Is that from, say, overthinking? Like there's too much information, like social media, I've read all this and I just can't.
It can be. Absolutely. Absolutely. And one of the things we see with kind of, our youth and I want to say like emerging adults these days is this sense of we're exposed to so much through news and social media about what's happening in the world and so much that we don't have control over, right? I can't stop wars. I can't change climate change, all these sorts of things. And that's a really overwhelming feeling for young people to just be like absorbing it and on the receiving end of it and being like, I can't do anything about it, right? We like to feel like we've got a sense of control and agency in most things in our life, but we see a lot that we can't change.
Yeah, wow.
Well, to that point, I mean, you remember we had this discussion a few years ago, around the time where that whole war with ISIS and all that sort of stuff. I remember the BBC was absolutely hammering it on their app. And after a while, like for me, I was just like, you know what? I don't think I need this anymore.
Yeah.
Delete. No more. Don't need that stuff. It does. It starts to affect you after a while. It's like, no, we don't need that stuff.
Yeah. Okay, so if we want to get a bit more technical now, so what happens in the human brain? I know you talked about, we'll touch on dopamine, but...
we should have brought George Paxanos for this, mate.
We should have, yes.
If you're going to go down that path.
We saw him the other day, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. He was at the 25th of March.
I've seen him everywhere.
Yeah. Anyway.
I was in Ithaki and he was there dancing. What are you doing here? So I'm from here. Okay.
Anyway,
we've digressed. If someone's got anxiety, what's the scientific chemical imbalance that goes on in a human's brain when that happens?
It's if I could use this analogy, it's like a smoke detector in the house, and the smoke detector is meant to go off when there's a fire in the house to protect us.
Yeah.
But for some people, the smoke detector goes off every time we overcook some toast, right? So it's got an overly sensitive system, and it perceives threats, it perceives danger, it perceives risky situations more than it needs to, more than what fits the situation rationally.
I've heard the vagus nerve be mentioned in this thing. What does that thing do?
Yeah. So absolutely relating to anxiety and kind of stress and our ability to regulate ourselves. So we all experience sort of stress. We've all got a window in which we can handle stress.
Yep.
Sometimes we can be in situations where we jump outside that window. It feels like it's intolerable for us. It feels way too overwhelming. And we all have kind of ways of regulating ourselves. So, our brain, our neurotransmitters, vagus nerve, all this kind of works to send messages between the brain and the body, motivate us towards action, but also help us then regulate ourselves as well.
How can someone regulate themselves if they know they've got high anxiety? Because some people don't even realise they've got anxiety until someone points it out to them.
It's a good point. Look, there's a lot of different things we can do. Sometimes we can do really like practical physical things. So if you ever feel overwhelmed and you want to real quickly come over that, jump in a cold shower. Cold is super effective for regulating our body without us having to do much kind of cognitive work. We don't have to think our way through the situation. We have something called the deep dive reflex. So if you imagine jumping in a swimming pool of water, your heart rate's going to change, your blood pressure's going to change physiologically, your body changes. And that helps bring that level of stress down and helps us regulate ourselves. So there's stuff like that we can do. But then if our anxiety has got to do with a lot of overthinking or thinking in ways that are not quite accurate, so we might think in ways that are very black and white, or we might jump to conclusions, right? If I walked into the room today and I was thinking, the guys are not going to like me, they're going to ask me questions I don't know the answers to, what if I stuff up and make a mistake, right? I'm priming myself to feel anxious by the time I walk in the door. So it's about being able to pick up on those thought patterns that are not helpful for us and try and like challenge and change them.
So I guess on the flip side of that, I guess there are strategies to help get the best out of you in the absence of these types of, emotions or feelings as well. What sort of things can people be doing? I mean, overthinking is one thing.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing, not thinking about something at all is probably not ideal to some degree? What sort of things can we do?
Yes, it's that kind of realistic thinking, right? So I'm not necessarily going to walk in here and be like, I'm going to know the answer to every question and it's going to go so great and it's going to be the best podcast episode they've ever had, right? I'm not going to like try and delude myself.
It might be.
Let me know if it is.
Shaping up.
So I don't want to like, because sometimes we hear like positive, like just be positive, just talk positive. That's not really a solution either, because it's not always reality. So it's like, what's realistic? Okay, realistic is I'll come in, we'll do the episode. I might stumble over my words. Okay, so what? Everyone sometimes stumbles anyway. You know, it's not the end of the world. It's about kind of maintaining that realistic approach of like, is it that bad if it happens? Probably not. Anxiety tells us that things are very high stakes.
Yes.
Sometimes they are, a lot of the times they're not.
That's great. Great advice. And it's simple.
Yeah,
it
cold
really
showers. How good is that?
Well, I've been trying to get you on this bandwagon for a while. I'm doing it.
Do you do the ice baths or the cold showers? Or
I want to get a nice... He's got one.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a pain in the ass. We had it set up here in the corner. And I had to, you got to go at least get 4 bags of ice just to make it worthwhile. And you got to fill it up. And then, so we all had turns, me and my kids, but it's a pain in the ass.
I liked what he'd gotten like big Tupperware containers, filled them with water and chucked them in the freezer. So there were like icebergs in this bloody thing.
Yeah. So he's sitting there and these things are floating.
But seriously, since I can't remember who it was who told me about, you should have the cold showers instead. And you feel so much better. It makes sense because, what's the best you feel? It's generally after you've come out of the water at the beach.
Yeah.
And you're like, this is so good.
Yeah.
I think it's the cold.
Yeah.
And since I swapped over to that, man, I physically feel a lot better.
They say it's good for like inflammation as well in the body.
Yes.
Like people have like chronic health conditions who
wow.
sort of also use it as well. So
Well, I can vouch for it. It's good.
Well, I'm up to 30 seconds now.
30 seconds.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, you're not hardcore like me, mate.
So you go in cold off the bat.
Straight away.
Nah, I'm hot,
Summer,
nice,
winter.
and then hold my breath, and then I start breathing.
See, I think that's part of it. That's
how I get
part of
through
it. Don't hold your breath. Don't do anything. Just go in. It's like, it's not cold.
Yeah.
Just tell yourself.
you got to like hand yourself over to the discomfort.
Yes.
It's like if you're in the tug of war with it, it's going to feel more painful. But if you like surrender to the pain, you can last a bit longer.
So with my hot water, it's a second delay. So as soon as I hit cold, there's a second delay. So I know it's going to come.
Yeah.
So usually I hold my breath and I focus on breathing. I'll do that now.
Yeah.
And I sit there stiff. And then I relax, and then then I put my head under, and then 30 seconds is my limit.
But see,
that's not bad.
During COVID, right? During COVID, which is where all this nonsense started with the podcast, we'd go down to Brighton in winter.
Oh, that's how it started.
And we were walking up, and we'd have our coffee and all that sort of thing. But then we'd later on in the COVID run, we'd go for swims in winter. What was the first thing we would do though? It'd be like, no, it's not cold. Just run straight in. It's like ripping a Band-Aid off.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't go. If I had to do it on my own, I wouldn't go because it was. And we had Petro with us as well.
Yeah,
we had 3 of us. Yeah. So all right, let's just run in. And you didn't want to let the other person down.
Yeah.
I'm a man. Manly. You didn't want to cat
Subtle
out.
peer pressure.
Yeah, exactly. And we did.
But to that point as well, I mean, it's a good sort of segue because what we were doing at that point without really knowing it is creating a bit of a support network during that period, and we all learnt the importance of connections during that period. But from your perspective, as Greeks who are very sort of communal and whatnot, how important is it to have those kinds of connections? We saw that as this is a mental health thing more than anything.
Yeah.
How important is that sort of stuff?
I don't think anything can replace what we get through social connection. And, there's a lot of talk about like AI and how it might take over, even with psychologists, can it take over the role of a psychologist? But I think there's something just so grounding and connecting about just being with another person in whatever state that is. You're having fun together, you're crying together, you're grieving together. It doesn't matter what it is, but we bond through emotion, whether they be the happy ones or the not so great ones. And it's a source of comfort. It's a source of identity. It's a source of feeling like I'm part of something bigger than myself. It's so important for us.
So team sports as well, I'm guessing. There's got to be huge benefits to doing stuff like that.
Yeah, and like community, right? I love the podcast. I love this idea of like, in ways bringing Greek community together because it's something that I think society doesn't naturally do as well. You know, we used to live in villages. We used to be connected in ways that we're not nowadays. Connection used to happen a little bit more easily through community. And I think we have to work harder to create community for ourselves these days.
I've got to ask, based on what we just said, is there any data now around how damaging that period of lockdown was for people's mental well-being, their psyches and whatnot?
Yeah, I think we're still seeing the after effects of it. I think, you know, depending on individual people, some were definitely impacted more than others. Certainly with kids, one of the things we've seen post-COVID lockdowns is a really hard time getting back to school. Like our rates of school refusal at the moment are really quite high. And there is thought to that might be linked to COVID and how COVID sort of manifested for kids.
When we say school refusal, are we talking about kids saying, I don't want to go?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I feel like I can't go. I don't want to go. That's not necessarily from like a rebellious perspective. It's often kind of anxiety driven, or there's other things going in their life. They feel like they can't cope with going to school. And so they've got really low attendance rates.
So I suspect as well that would be the same for adults, you know, like that whole question about working from home. You know, there's a big push now to get people back to the office, and there's obviously a lot of resistance.
Yes.
Again, same question, I guess. Is there data around that? Do we know, are there trends around that now?
I'm not so sure about like adults and the return to work. I know there's definitely like anecdotally, I've heard people sort of resisting wanting to go back into the office, or maybe preferring sort of hybrid approaches where you're in the office, you get that sense of connection with your kind of work colleagues and broader culture, but then you can also have the flexibility of being at home, and there's lots of perks to that as well.
Yeah. Are you surprised by the way that people reacted to things like lockdown and whatnot? I mean, again, we started a podcast out of it, you know, to sort of try and build those connections. Is there anything that you saw that sort of interested you to be like, wow, that's an interesting behavior that's come off the back of that?
I mean, we saw a lot. COVID was the busiest psychologists have ever been. Like, really? I remember it just being like so difficult for people to get in to see psychologists in ways that it's not now. Like it's much easier to get in to see someone nowadays, but we were just all so busy. I think it impacted people in all sorts of ways, in ways you wouldn't be able to kind of predict or expect either. It was such an unnatural situation. Like we're trying to find solutions for how do we maintain our health and well-being in a situation that's so unnatural. We're not creatures that are meant to be isolated. I mean, that's not how survival of our species has worked.
Yeah, definitely. So, good point. So were there any studies done before COVID lockdown? Like, did they reach out to psychologists? Were you aware of what the impact on human beings it would be if they are isolated that you know of?
Yeah, I don't know about much that was done. I know during COVID there was a bit of a rush from sort of like researchers and academics to, you know, get those ethics applications through. And I mean, within the space of addictions, for example, we definitely saw like a rise in things like online gambling and people finding ways to cope in an unnatural situation. And those ways of coping aren't necessarily always healthy for us. It's great if we got into walking and running and getting our 10,000 steps, but you know, that's not possible for everyone. And it's depending on who we are, many of us tended to also kind of lean towards some unhealthier ways of coping, drinking more, gambling more, all these sorts of things.
So you talked about online gambling. So was that to trigger our dopamine in our brains? Is that what you'd put it down to? We needed that dopamine kick or hit?
Yeah. Dopamine being the thing that gives us that sense of like pleasure in our day-to-day life. If we're indoors all day, we can go out, 2 kilometers or whatever, or 5 kilometers, go for a walk. Okay, that's great, but we're not getting that sort of natural activation of like the happy hormones, I guess, that we would get day to day through seeing people, through being out in the world, through those little incidental moments where you walk down the street and you just say like g'day to someone. You don't even know them, right? But it's just those little moments that really do a lot for us. And it's that was lacking.
Okay. All right. So we'll touch on dopamine now. So just explain what that is. I've got here, it's a molecule in our brain, but I'm sure you'll have a better explanation than what I can read here.
Yes. So dopamine is what we call a neurotransmitter, which is essentially a chemical messenger. and it sends messages between the brain and our nervous system in the body. And so it does a lot of things. So dopamine helps regulate our kidney functions. Dopamine helps us consolidate memories in the brain. Dopamine is involved in movement and our ability to coordinate our movement. So, for example, people who have Parkinson's disease who have difficulties with motor control, we see that dopamine is implicated in that disease.
You're saying there's not enough dopamine, or
it's the activation of it? Yes, yeah, yeah.
Oh, so when you have too much dopamine, it can cause Parkinson's. Is that what you're saying?
Or it's not sort of activated in the way that we would hope it would be. It's not necessarily being activated enough to be able to sort of control motor movements.
But it's probably not accurate to say, for example, just be happier and it's going to be okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's like dopamine does so much. The thing we talk about it most for is it creates a feeling of pleasure. And that's a very short-term sense of like gratification. So it's like, if I, have some cheese and crackers, I love cheese and crackers, I'll put it in my mouth, I'll eat it, my brain will be like, oh, yum. That tastes good, right? That'll probably be the first 2-3 bites. By the time I've had maybe like 8 crackers with cheese, my brain's not having that same like, oh, this is so good kind of feeling. It dies down. So dopamine gives us the feeling of pleasure, but it also motivates us to seek that out again and again. And that's why it's involved in the development of an addiction. Because when I do that thing, when I drink some alcohol, when I gamble, when I play video games, it feels good. But then dopamine goes, do it again, do it again, do it again, do it again.
Okay. So the relationship with things like an orgasm, for example.
Yes.
Is that what Nick's laughing? Grow up, mate.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is a serious discussion.
You're going to say something else. You think you'd come out with that?
What did you think I was going to say?
I don't know. Food or something.
No. But most people would be sitting there listening and saying, okay, pleasure. Okay, well, obviously, having an orgasm or something along those lines. Yeah. Dopamine is the main thing in that scenario?
Yes. So from an evolutionary perspective, the reason we have dopamine is because life was hard back in caveman days. We had to sort of ensure the species survived. And so sex was important for, survival of the species, procreation. We needed to kind of reproduce. And so that's why dopamine is activated during sex orgasm. But also food, right? It was hard to find food. We needed to hunt the lions and the bears, and we needed to forage for fruits, and all that was effortful. Nowadays, I jump on Uber Eats, no effort at all. But back then, effortful. And so we needed that like reward at the end to be like, yeah, this was good. Keep doing it. So evolutionary, dopamine exists for survival of the species, to help us do things that were hard or effortful, but important for us to survive. Nowadays, everything's pretty easy. Yeah. We don't have to put the same degree of like effort into survival.
So that was going to be my question now. Like, in the absence of those really important and necessary reasons why, we do all these things, we're now getting dopamine, I guess, I would assume in sort of smaller amounts, but, more consistently?
100%. It's exactly that.
Okay. So what effect does that have on us? Evolutionarily, let's say. Did I say it right? Yeah.
Yes, 100%. We are getting dopamine activated in kind of smaller doses, but more frequently, which can have all sorts of effects. Sometimes what happens is that it changes a person's baseline, so things don't feel as good. Just generally speaking, I'm not as excited by things because I'm always getting those little bits of dopamine activation, or I'm seeking something more exciting, more interesting, more novel to get that same excited feeling.
You just reminded me, there's a great scene in the documentary, the Metallica documentary, Some Kind of Monster. Have you seen this?
No.
You'd like it. There's they have a performance coach, a therapist.
Oh, I've heard this. Yeah.
But their manager described the situation so perfectly, because in 2000 they nearly broke up. They were talking about, for a band that's successful as that, right? Sold out, 100,000, 200,000 seat venues and all that sort of stuff, where they go out every night and, they get all this adulation and whatnot. What's their incentive basically to go back afterwards? When you've got all the money in the world, you've got all this stuff, right? Yeah. What's your incentive to go back and do another album or go back and do all this other stuff when incrementally, the more you do, the less weight it sort of carries.
Yeah.
Is that a good sort of an analogy of, what you were just talking about?
Absolutely. Like the kind of further along we get of those goals or that sort of activation of dopamine, the less rewarding things feel. I use the example of, you go to Disneyland for the first time. I've never been to Disneyland, but I imagine it's fun, right? You go to Disneyland, especially if you're a kid, someone who likes Disney, let's say. You go in, there's the music, there's the fairy floss, there's the rides, there's those people that dress up as the characters, right? So your brain is like, oh, wow, this is cool, this is exciting, it's new, it's interesting, right? So dopamine activated. If you worked at Disneyland, it's not going to feel so exciting or fun. You'll probably be like, bloody hell, not this music again. I've heard Frozen for the 1,000th time, right? So there's something to be said for
Great
that
analogy.
wears off. Yeah.
Great analogy.
Okay. Yes, I'm still fascinated what you said before. So through evolution, we loved, when you found food or, you got scared when there was a bear or something like that in the corner. But now in our society, we've got so much of that. So we've got readily available food. Has the human DNA caught up with how dopamine was eventually designed? Yeah. Has it changed?
In some ways, yes. I mean, we've still got those very kind of primal parts to the brain, and they're those very sort of emotionally driven parts of the brain. We'll never get rid of that anxiety or that fear because it's just so kind of core to our survival and will continue to be. But what we see is that the front part of the brain, which is prefrontal cortex, that's the part of our brain that helps us make wise, rational decisions. It helps us with planning and organization and problem solving. That part of the brain certainly becomes more well developed, through the history of evolution. And that's what helps us, build houses and get up and have jobs and go to work and keep society functioning and democracy and all the rest of it, right? It helps us with those kind of higher order processes in life.
So you got dopamine going, you got the happy drug, some people call it. How do you manage that now? So how do you get rid of addiction? What could you do to get rid of the addiction that you're supposedly addicted to?
Big question.
Okay.
How long's a piece of string? I'm sensing that as well.
Or should we go something a bit more specific? So let's say scrolling. So you're addicted to scrolling, which I'm sure a lot of our listeners will be hearing about this. So
Put the phone down.
Yeah, exactly.
Lock it away.
So, like my dad, he's like, you want to lose weight? Simple solution. Rafto.
Yeah.
Sew it up.
Sew it up.
Sorry. That's not what we're suggesting.
Just stop.
Yeah.
No, if it's like serious addiction to things, then I guess through medical professionals, because it's not always safe to stop. So if someone drinks a lot, takes drugs, and then they stop, that can be more dangerous sometimes than actually drinking, right?
Why is that?
So the body can go into withdrawals that can actually sometimes be fatal, particularly with alcohol. So if someone drinks a lot, we're always like, don't just stop. You got to see a doctor and you got to actually cut back a lot of the time. Or if you stop, you got to do it in a rehab facility. Okay. This is quite significant levels of alcohol, right?
So a lot of that with coffee. I try to stop coffee.
When you stop coffee, you get withdrawals. Yeah. That's it. And if we took the phone away for 3 days and you're someone who likes to scroll social media, you'd feel some sort of withdrawal. You'd feel irritable, you'd feel antsy, you'd feel a bit agitated, you'd feel like, oh, I wish I could just, and you'd find it pops into your head. Mm-hmm. So this is all those kind of features of like a quote unquote withdrawal that we would experience. Mm-hmm. So we do talk about if we scroll a bit too much or we're doing something that's a bit unhelpful for us, looking at how we can stop for a period of time or at least cut back. But in order to do that, it's not enough to just do less of it, right? That'll work for a week, maybe, and then we'll go back to doing what we do. So at the same time, we have to increase behaviors that are aligned with our values, the things that are important to us, the things that feel meaningful, the things that give us a sense of purpose in life, This for you guys, for example, right? It's like if I'm trying to stop or do less of the unhealthy stuff, what can I do in life that gives me a sense of purpose, meaning, satisfaction? It's values aligned. And when people live life aligned with their values, overall they feel more content. They feel satisfied. It's not necessarily happy moment to moment, but it's that feeling of I can stop and I go, you know what? I'm all right. Life's okay. I feel okay. I feel some degree of satisfaction or contentment in the life that I've got.
So for Nick's crack addiction, more podcasts is his prescription.
Wouldn't hurt.
I thought you were going to say we're addicted to podcasts.
Do you like that?
I like
where I took it?
That's good.
Sorry, mate.
That I lost. Wow. Okay. So we're scrolling. So don't go cold turkey. Break it down to something more reasonable. So every half an hour, every 6 hours or something like that.
Trying to set limits. And sometimes we might need reminders on our phone or something like that. You know, when I'm trying to do some proper serious work, when I was writing the book, I used to put my phone on flight mode. And that didn't mean I never picked it up and went to open Instagram, but it was enough of a barrier to be like, you're doing that thing where you don't look right now, remember? Because then I'd have to take it off flight mode to do that. Yeah. So barriers can also be helpful. Yeah.
So self-discipline as well is a big thing, isn't it?
It's self-discipline, and it's like putting barriers in place because the algorithms, the companies, they know how to hook us in, right? It's like they know how to draw us in. They've got I'm afraid to say they've got psychologists working there. They've got the neuroscientists.
Well, marketing,
they know.
Human behavior studies,
Exactly.
That's a thing. It happens.
Exactly. And it's effective. It works for a reason. There's a reason so many people are on TikTok or Instagram because it works. What they're doing works.
So remember back at Qantas, corporate days, we used to go into team meetings and we had to put our phone on silent and face down in a meeting because people would have it up, they'd see a flash or email or something like that.
Yes.
So put little strategies together and then implement it and then replace it with something like exercise.
Yeah. Things that are healthy, that are meaningful, that feel aligned to kind of who we want to be.
Yeah, exactly.
Amazing.
Well, that's why my kids were doing squad swimming. That was the only way we could get out of it.
Yeah.
They were swimming in the morning, school, then we had co-curricular stuff. That was the best way for them to get off their phones.
Yeah.
So,
It's a huge challenge as well. Again, I've got a 7-year-old and, getting them off the devices, that's the big thing, it's in the vernacular with parents now. Like, how do you get your kids off the device?
Yeah.
And my mum would always say, you're having withdrawals, and this was back playing PlayStation and all that kind of stuff. That's got to be a huge area of study now, surely. Like, screen time and whatnot. What do you know about that?
Yeah, and it's always coming up in conversations as well. Parents asking that question of like, what do I do? It's just like that, like cry for help. Like, what do I do? Help. And it is, we see kids, and this is with no judgment or disrespect to parents, little kids who are on phones from, they're 1 year old and they know how to navigate it. And of course they see parents on them and, it's just kind of where society has progressed to these days, but it's part of their life from such an early point.
So it's the modern day pacifier.
Yeah.
The old baby don't, shut up, here's the phone.
Yeah.
Thank God we can eat properly.
Yeah.
But it's interesting as well because, schools are putting policies in place now where screens are important to the development of a child as well. But where's the balance? Like what's the line that you need to, sort of straddle in order to not it being a detriment to their development?
What we need is opportunities for kids to be bored.
Yes.
Remember the day where we would like go out to dinner with our parents and they'd be with their friends and we'd just kind of be sitting there like occupying ourselves, ripping up the like pieces of napkin or chucking them in the cupboard and all sorts of weird things we used to do, right? Like find ways to, it's what we refer to as frustration tolerance. Can I build my tolerance to be frustrated? And nowadays, kids don't get those opportunities because as soon as I feel something that I don't like, I can distract myself. I'm on the phone, I'm on a video game, I'm on an iPad, I'm on something, and I don't have to sit with that discomfort.
I feel like that's our fault, though, more than anything, because we feel like, you got to occupy them, otherwise they're going to misbehave or whatever it is. Like, what role do parents have to play in that, do you think?
Parents have to also get comfortable with the behavior that's going to result, right? With the kid mucking up at the dinner table when you're out at a restaurant. Okay, they're kids, it happens, right? So it's for us to build our tolerance as well as the kids to build their tolerance. Yeah.
Very interesting.
Brilliant. Well, what I got out of that is we're going to have some strategy. Instead of saying, put your phone down, you're going to say something different. Put the phone down and go water the grass. Or put the phone down and go to the shops and get me something or something like that.
Well, what you said before about boredom, you're the second person I think in the space of about a week and a bit who said that. And I can't remember who for the life of me it was, but, they were saying something like, kids, they're always looking to, be occupied and whatever.
Yeah.
But very rarely is it that bad that they'll come to you and be like, I'm bored.
Yes.
Right? The response was, well, I wonder what you're going to do about that.
Yeah.
Basically,
Yeah.
Let's figure that out. It's on you to figure that out now.
Yes.
Anyway.
I read an article a while ago about detoxifying people from dopamine.
Oh, dopamine detox.
Yeah, that's it. Is that such a thing? It sounds, the way you're shaking your head, I know you're going to say, but
So I don't know if I told you guys this. So I'll answer your question in a bit of a long-winded way.
Yeah.
So dopamine detox did its round on social media. Dopamine was trending. We had dopamine detox, dopamine fasts. There was anti-dopamine parenting had its moment.
Yep.
Dopamine menus. There's all these different kind of dopamine trends online, right? And so the book actually came about. So it wasn't my idea, the book. The publishers at Penguin, they have a team and they analyze trends, and they identified dopamine is trending because of all the stuff that was going on social media around it. So, and therefore they asked me, would you write a book on this topic? Because it seems to be quite topical. The dopamine detox is, it had its moment in Silicon Valley. You'd have all these big execs being like, I'm going to do nothing pleasurable for 24 hours. I'm going to remove myself I'm not going to listen to music. I'm not going to eat anything other than dry crackers. I'm not going to, I'm not going to have any fun, any kind of stimulation in my life. And I'm going to do this detox. I mean, if that works for you, great. I mean, from a chemical perspective, it's not going to do that much. We don't actually detox from dopamine itself. We always have to have dopamine operating in our brain and body. And a short period of time, like 24 hours, is not usually long enough to create any sort of long-lasting impact for us. It's just going to be 24 hours of feeling really uncomfortable. And maybe when we come out the other end of that, that feels good in some way, like I achieved some sort of self-discipline. But from a perspective of actually changing our habits, changing our patterns, is not going to do much. We need a longer period of time to make changes.
Very interesting. Well, this reminded me of a bit of a trend that's happening in the travel world at the moment.
Oh, okay.
Have you heard about this? It sounds obscene, but it isn't. It's called raw dogging.
Oh, yeah.
Have you heard of this?
Yeah.
Have you heard about this,
Raw
Nick?
dogging.
Raw dogging. It's not what it sounds like, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So
I accidentally said raw dogging at a conference the other day and wasn't familiar with the behind the scenes of what that meant. Someone came up to me the other day and clarified, and I was like, oh, okay, maybe I won't say that at academic conferences anymore. But yes.
Because the first time I saw that mentioned, I'm like, what the hell is this? Anyway, so it turns out, Nicholas, so in a nutshell, I'm reading this off the internet, off the interwebs, right? So in a nutshell, raw dogging a flight means skipping out on the little luxuries that come with flying to simply do nothing, even to the point of possible discomfort. Usually the rules of raw dogging a flight mean no entertainment. That cancels out watching TV and movies, listening to music or podcasts. So basically, they sit there in the strap themselves in, put the blanket on, and just basically sit there for however long their flight is. Yeah. That's raw dogging.
And that's a thing, is it?
That's a thing now. So I raw dogged. It's funny just saying it. I raw dogged that flight.
That's what it was like in the 80s, wasn't it?
Well,
That's
it
how we used
was.
to fly.
But you couldn't even read it. Like now you can't read a book if you want to raw dog properly.
Yeah, you just sit there.
Wow.
You might sleep, but otherwise you just sit there and you don't occupy yourself in any way. It's like, I mean, I think that's maybe people like the idea of setting themselves a challenge. Like I did something hard and that feels
discipline, maybe.
that feels rewarding at the end. But
but isn't that kind of what you were just talking about? Is
that dopamine
about to
detox.
Without them realizing that this is what I'm actually doing.
Yeah.
It kind of is, isn't
It's
it?
the same sort of thing. I don't know what sort of, I don't know that it has a kind of bigger impact other than your 17-hour flight to Dallas, you just suffer through it.
I've done that.
You didn't
Dallas
raw
to
dog it
Brisbane.
though.
I had a good seat because I was lucky.
Yeah. So it does,
Still tough.
it makes us maybe feel good to achieve something hard, but I don't know. I wouldn't do it.
No, neither.
Oh, it probably would mess with your head.
Yeah.
What else for that long? What, you can't do anything, you can't read anything, you can't stimulate yourself.
Yeah. Again, an unnatural situation. Even if we were alone for the duration of the flight to Dallas or whatever, you can still at least be able to move around, be out in nature, occupy yourself with natural things that are stimulating in the world.
So what about prisoners now? If they're in isolation for so long, and what do you call it? Raw dogging. You thought raw dogging in
prison.
There is a dogging life.
So I don't know if it's just in movies, but do people get put in isolation on their own in darkness for 24 hours?
Look, I believe
Surely
they
that's
do,
not good for
but
you.
like psychologically, it's not going to be good for you.
Yeah.
No, that much time. I mean, like the Buddhist monks do their mindfulness practices where it is like extended periods of time, but that's really with the view of being present in the moment. It's very kind of much a way of being in the world, very present centered. Being put in isolation in prison is a different experience, probably more traumatizing than anything, and psychologically probably not very good for anyone.
Wow. So they're not really getting rehabilitated.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say.
They come out worse.
Yeah, there's no rehabilitation side of this. It's a punishment, really.
Yeah.
Well, the Evzons are due here as well. Standing there, the Greek presidential guard, for those who don't.
At the time of recording, but by the time we release this episode.
By the time we release this, they'll have probably been
Come and
gone.
gone.
Yeah, but what does that sort of do? It's a similar sort of concept, I guess. These guys are just standing there for hours on end, looking straight ahead. They can't move. The only thing they can do is blink.
Yeah.
Surely that can't necessarily be good for you either.
As long as it's with some balance, right? If at the end of that they get to kind of like, take that hat off and put the next one on and have some balance to it. I mean, it would be very tough, very tough. But, we hear kind of stories of
I bet you've never had that question before, by the way.
that is a first.
Curveball.
Yeah.
We're throwing lots of curves at you here. We apologise.
Yeah, that's okay. I guess it's that question of like, how do we, for anyone, when we're in a situation that feels very out of our control, that we have to kind of just push through, how do we get through it? And usually our thought processes can take us in all weird, wonderful, and unhelpful directions and add like to the already uncomfortable situation. But there's something to be said for just being present in that moment that can help us get through
we
it.
sort of touched on it. Again, the Evzons, they're there for an hour on their own? Is that what it is?
I can't remember either.
There's a certain
they do
time
swap,
limit.
I think, after an hour.
But you said it's good to get comfortable being bored. That might be there being comfortable for an hour.
Yeah.
How to handle it, possibly.
We talk about this idea of acceptance, right? And it's like when we were talking about the ice bath before, like just settle into the discomfort of it. If we can go in and be like, I accept that I'm going to have a minute to 30 seconds, I don't know however long people do it for, of discomfort. If I can accept that as being like, it is what it is right now, I can get through it easier. But if I sit there and I'm like, oh, this is awful, I don't like it, I wish it wasn't like that, and I add this kind of thought layer to it, that's when we get more suffering.
So mind over matter really is what it's about.
Yeah, our thoughts are so powerful.
Well, yeah. What is the power of our thoughts? Like we've heard so many times, through documentaries and whatnot that, that whole mind over matter thing is such an important thing. It really can manifest or have physical manifestations as well, rather than just, it being in your head, can't it?
Yeah, absolutely. From a psychological framework, we say our thoughts, our emotions, and our behaviors are all linked. So as I was saying, if I walked into this podcast recording with a very sort of anxious frame of mind, I'd be feeling anxious, and then I'd probably be doing anxious things. I might be like second guessing myself as I was talking, or I might be like, oh, sorry, can we cut that and start again, right? I'd be behaving in a way that's different to maybe what I'm doing. So it's our thoughts impact our feelings, which impact our behaviors.
Very interesting.
I've got a future question for you. So you're into research, obviously. So what area of dopamine research excites you the most?
Ooh, that's an interesting question.
And where do you see the next major breakthrough coming from?
Oh, wow. Okay.
2 questions you want.
Yeah. I mean, I'm very interested in gambling specifically and sort of like the impacts, from a neuroscience perspective of gambling, but maybe even more so.
Which side of the fence, to gamble more or not to gamble more?
To gamble less.
Okay,
but from a public health perspective. So to like, actually, how do we educate the public about the risks of gambling more than just a gamble responsibly tagline at the end of a sports bet ad? But like, how do we
Is
get
that working?
Well, no. And there's all sorts of political things tied up with gambling in Australia, how much advertising we have around it. So I'm really interested in kind of like on a big picture scale, not the sort of, 1 to 2% of the population that will have a gambling addiction. That's about roughly what it is. But like the general public who gamble and might experience some harms as a result of it, how do we sort of like help that group in the population, and how do we sort of have more public health initiatives around it? That's what I'm really kind of interested in.
Yeah, no.
We've done it with alcohol better than we've done it with gambling. So if you think about like the messaging we've been given about alcohol, it's like, okay, if I go out and I decide that I'm going to drink, I'll have drinks of water in between alcoholic beverages. I will make sure I have a meal before I drink. I'll have a plan B. I won't drive home. I'll make sure I get an Uber, right? So we've got like and I don't do that because I'm an alcoholic. I do that because I understand there's some more responsible ways to engage with alcohol, and alcohol can have risks. We're not there when it comes with gambling. It's like, if I say I'm going to gamble, but I'm only going to take $200 or something, people are like, oh, do you have a problem with gambling? Is it that you can't control yourself? As opposed to like, no, these might just be sort of healthier ways for me to manage if I do decide to gamble.
It's funny you said that about alcohol as well, because it has changed. I feel like it's changed because you got the 0% alcohol.
Yeah.
And people don't, I don't know, do they drink as much? I don't think
Dry
we drink as
July,
much.
fast Feb, all those things as well. Yeah.
Okay.
We've got a real problem with alcohol in this country, I think, but I think it's actually starting to get a bit better because of things like that,
Yeah.
Because we talked about this so many times. I don't think Greece has an alcoholic problem.
No.
And they don't have an age limit, from what I understand.
Well, they do, but they don't make it taboo in the sense that, by the time you turn 18, you've already been sort of exposed to it because you're not, it's not that forbidden fruit type thing, where as soon as they turn 18 here, it's like, let's get a slab, you know what I mean? And get pissed.
Well, it was a cultural thing. I guess when we were growing up, it's like how much you can drink. Oh, I did 10 beers. Oh, you had 12. Oh, you're better than me. Or what's that? I think that's sort of gone maybe, or it's diluted.
Yes,
possibly.
it's reducing. We're seeing sort of in that like early adult age bracket nowadays, less, there's less alcohol consumption, so less people drinking, but also when they drink with more moderation.
Yep.
Is it to do with maybe society's become more healthy? Everyone wants to be more healthy.
More
I guess.
awareness as well.
Awareness.
Yeah.
Okay.
Same with smoking, right? Rates of smoking, I think, is around between 10 to 15% of Aussies smoke nowadays. So
Still pretty. Is that including vaping?
no.
Okay.
Yeah, vaping is a whole other kettle of fish.
But 10 to 15%, a lot would have transitioned to vaping. I know a few. But
Yes. Well, it was originally marketed as a way to stop, right? Like vape, and you'll, quit your cigarettes. And
or the whole tax thing, became really expensive.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
It's an interesting conversation about like regulation. We talk about this in gambling. How much do you actually regulate a market? And if you over-regulate, it actually creates that gap for something else to come through, like vapes.
Yeah,
so if you make it too expensive, too inaccessible, too highly regulated, it creates a gap in the market for other things to come through.
Wow, very interesting. Wow.
Yeah, powerful. Okay. All right. So where do we stand now with gambling? So what's your latest thing on that now?
What's my latest? If we can at
Have you
least
got any initiatives that you want to talk about now that you would look at possibly stopping people who are at the high end of gambling?
Yeah, I think, advertising nowadays, we've got to do something in terms of reducing advertising for gambling, like the marketing towards young men. It's normalised. You see the sports bet ads. We've got Shaquille O'Neal advertising sports bet. I mean, I think there's a lot we can do to sort of just contain that at the very least.
All right, so we're sort of getting towards the end of the discussion. I just wanted to ask you about founder of the Australian Institute for Human Wellness.
Yes.
I mean, looking at you, and I mean this with absolute respect, you don't look like the kind of person who started something like that. Purely because, I'd picture someone in their 60s. You know what I mean? So what's it all about? It sounds awesome.
Yeah. So it's essentially, it's an organisation. We provide a whole range of mental health services. And so we're involved in kind of clinical services. So as I said, we've got a clinic in Cogra, just opposite St. George Hospital. We've got a few psychologists that work there. We do one-on-one therapy. We do group therapy programs. We do workshops, webinars. We're involved in research initiatives as well, like through my connection with UTS. So we try and kind of work across the spectrum of mental health, not just people who are struggling, but also those more preventative initiatives as well, to try and, I guess, service the community.
Yeah, wow. I mean, such an awesome initiative. You know, like was it your idea? Or did it, how was it born?
It was born out of COVID.
Yep.
Speaking of things born out of COVID. Yes.
So COVID was a good thing.
Yeah. And due to the kind of demand that there was for people to be able to access mental health services, but through that as well, we go out to some more regional, rural parts of Australia. I was saying before that I love going out to Broken Hill. I go out there a few times a year. I work with the health district, done work with the Royal Flying Doctors as well through the organisation, being able to work with their staff as well as the kind of clients in those areas. So lots of opportunity to do different things, sort of mental health related.
Yeah, wow.
Wow, so that's why you went out to Broken Hill and places like Tamworth.
Yeah, well, Tamworth's fun.
So you're a bit of a musician.
Tamworth's music. I go up for the country music festival. Okay. So less serious business.
Yeah.
But Broken Hill, I go Baronga. I've been up sort of north, Cairns and Northern Territory and stuff. That's been mostly for psych-related work.
Wow. And is that do you do with the Indigenous communities up there, or is it anyone in general?
Anyone in general. When I go out to Broken Hill, there's quite a few sort of local Indigenous communities there. I don't work directly with them, but certainly we have a lot of Aboriginal mental health workers that are a part of the work that we do. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow. So tell us about your music. You're an accomplished pianist. How did all that start about? Because from what I've been reading, you played, actually Tom mentioned in the intro, you played at some really accomplished places.
Yeah, that was another one of those moments where Mum's going, "You'll thank me later," and I'm like, "Oh, thanks, Mum."
Go, Mum.
I started piano lessons when I was 3.
Wow.
And my mum was like, "She's 3. She's got nothing better to do. Take some piano lessons." Right? What else is she going to do?
Were your parents musically minded? Your parents?
No, neither of my parents play any sort of musical instruments. I mean, my mum loved music, and I think she wished that she had had the opportunity to learn, and it was maybe sort of her living it out through me. Yep. But she was so dedicated to taking me to lessons and sitting there when I was really quite little and helping me practice as well. Yeah. And so I guess by the time I was old enough to decide if I wanted to continue or not, it was already so much a part of my life that it just made sense to keep going. And I loved it. And, then when I went to uni, I did psychology, but I did a major in music as well through the the conservatorium. So I was lucky enough to be able to do that. And I had the opportunity to perform in some really lovely, beautiful venues. Nowadays, I find ways to keep, staying connected with it. I'll perform sometimes. I like country music, so I go up to Tamworth for the country music festival, do some gigs up there. I've got friends in the scene. It's fun,
Yeah, I saw you in Dallas. Were you in Dallas?
I did go
Fort Worth.
I did.
Were
go
you
to
playing
Dallas.
there? No, you weren't.
No, that was pure fun. that was just wanted to get the Texas experience. I was actually on my way to Canada for a conference in gambling, and I was like, you know what? I got to fly via somewhere. Might as well go to Dallas, go to Fort Worth, and then I went down to Austin, saw Bob Dylan live, in Austin. So I had fun.
Amazing,
fantastic.
So what AMEB level do you have?
So I've done my licentiate diploma in piano. Yeah.
So this is well ahead of all.
So
that
it's like you go kind of like up to grade 8, and then you go your associate diploma, and then your licentiate diploma. So I've done that. Yeah.
What does that mean? Can you explain that for the non-musically minded people out there, including me?
Me to explain it? I'm not even that musically minded. The guy in my band is.
You are.
See, one of the guys in my band is actually a concert pianist and all that sort of thing, and he's same level as you. You could have that discussion with him.
Yeah. It means you get some letters after your name. Yeah. It's like a qualification, but you sit an exam, you have to answer questions about music, you have to perform as well, and there's sort of examiners. There's actually one national examiner, so he or she will sit all the exams, and then they've got like a second examiner, and you've got to pass, and it's
wow.
Yeah. Big deal.
Are you so do you 100% read the music, or can you actually hear a piece of music and play it? Are you one of those
Bit of both.
Wow.
Yeah. So like I guess through like when I was young, I did Suzuki, which is like very focused on like listening and the oral training. Yep. So because when I was like 3, it would have been a very slow process to try and read the music. So you learn more by hearing.
Yeah.
Wow.
See, I feel like you've got to, I mean, this is my opinion. I feel like you've got to do that first before you learn to read.
Yeah.
You've got to be able to listen first.
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
And it makes it more accessible for like younger kids to be able to learn as well, rather than wait till they can start reading and reading with some degree of fluency to then translate that to music.
Yeah, wow. So when's your next concert?
Nothing planned yet, but you never know.
We might have to tab you into a performance here, and we'll get together and play a gig.
I should have wheeled in a piano too.
I know, true. Actually, I've got one at home. I had a keyboard.
I love the piano. Yeah. So when I'm working, for example, I put my headphones on, I've got a whole list of piano songs. So I'm at the right level, and that's how it calms me down.
Yeah.
Relax. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Well
so
done.
good for just kind of like grounding us, especially like classical music as well, or music that doesn't have words to it. Often we can get sort of caught up in the words, but you put headphones on, listen to some more like acoustic classical type music. Beautiful.
It's amazing.
Wow.
I'm with you on
Fantastic.
that. Well
done.
Amazing stuff. I mean, again, we say this virtually at the end of every episode. We could talk for many more hours about this. And, the questions, I threw away most of our questions here because, we just went down a few rabbit holes there. Thank you so much for being here, Anastasia. I mean, it's very impressive that you're so accomplished at your age, number one. Very impressive that you've done what you've done with the book, where you're working. I mean, it's amazing stuff. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Well, I think it's even more impressive. You mentioned earlier, they reached out to you to write the book.
Yeah.
How good is that? So out of everyone they picked you.
Yeah.
These Penguin books. How good is that?
That's a pretty good
honor.
feather in your cap. Absolutely.
Yeah. No, it was a surprise email to get, but that's for sure. But I'm really thankful that I had the opportunity.
Yeah.
Well, the name of the book is The Dopamine Brain.
Yes.
And I know, Nick, you're listening to it at the moment, aren't you?
It's on Spotify. I
It
found
is.
it for free on Spotify.
Yes, on Spotify, Audible.
Yep, 100%.
Yeah,
audiobooks.
kickbacks for the Spotify, or should we be pushing people to buy the book?
Either or.
I thought I saw it in George Street as well. There's a bookstore in George Street.
It's in Dimmicks. It's in a couple of. I see it. I have my moment when I go to the airport because I travel a bit for work, and I'm like, it's still there.
Yeah, fantastic. And if it's not there, they must have sold out.
Yeah. It was just so popular. So
Be honest, you pushed it into the front of every
I'm
every
not going to
shelf.
lie. Sometimes, I go just to the front. Yeah.
And just dust it off. The dust goes on the other books.
Fantastic.
You bet.
Well done. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Anastasia, thank you so much.
Thank you.
UzoTalk@outlook.com is the email. Follow us on social media at UzoTalk and at Uzo_talk on Instagram. Also on YouTube. Nick Athanasiou, Dr. Anastasia Hronis, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
UzoTalk is produced, written and presented by Tom Skolarikas and Nick Athanasiou. Our theme music is written and played by Peter Apostolidis, with additional music from George Kalapidis and Bouzouki legend Thanasis Polykadriotis.
Ακολουθήστε μας στο Soundees, στο Spotify, στο Apple Podcasts και στο Google Podcasts.